So when you know you're going to lose 99% of your wealth, at some point you got to take a risk. Tesla had gone and bought 10 billion or $20 billion worth of Bitcoin, it'd be worth 100 billion right now, right? If Apple Computer did it and they started, what would happen to Bitcoin if Apple said, we're going to basically sweep all of our Apple cash flows into Bitcoin? Okay, well, Bitcoin would go up by a factor of 4. Mm-hmm. Apple would end up making $500 billion. Their stock would go up by $1 trillion. So anybody can do this at any scale. But now what happens if the Emiratis do it or the Saudis do it? It would be worth $1 trillion to them if they adopted as a reserve asset where they sweep their treasury reserves into this hard asset, hard currency, if you will, or hard money. We'll call it hard money. Currencies are going to be the province of nation states, and that's always going to be political. But what you can't dispute is if you've exported $100 billion worth of products, services, or commodities for your country, and if you trade that for Argentine pesos or bolivars, it's pretty obvious, right? You exported $100 billion worth of good stuff and you end up with $100 billion of paper going to zero. I think if you look at the environment right now, there's a massive demand for two things. Cryptocurrency in the form of a stable coin. If I have crypto dollars sitting on a network and I can grab $1 million and move it at the speed of light and I can do it without generating a taxable event, then that's very interesting as a payment rail, as like call it your checking account. And then crypto property, my savings account. So Bitcoin is obviously the king of crypto property. If you look at where the action right now is, it's in the stable coins that are exploding, and you can see this very interesting market dynamic between Tether and Circle and UST and what Terra Labs is doing. And if I walk down the street and I ask people, everybody in Africa or Asia or whatever, would you like crypto dollars in the palm of your hand that the bank can't seize and the government won't take? And asked anybody in Syria or Afghanistan, they would say in a heartbeat, yes. Even in China, everybody in China wants crypto US dollars, right? Everybody wants dollars. It's not because dollars are a great long-term investment. It's because dollar is a much better short-term investment than every other currency on earth. And so there's a massive demand for that. And that technology has gone from like 5 billion to 200 billion in like 24 months. And so there's a lot of action there. I think that'll go to $1 trillion, Guy. I think it'll go to 5 trillion if the regulators, provide any kind of guidance. It's not a hedge fund because we're not hedging. We're just unilaterally long. It's not really a hedge fund either. Hedge funds actually don't allocate more than 2% of their capital at any one position. We're 1,000% allocated to one thing. It's hardly a hedge in any way. With regard to whether we got the right vehicle, well, we looked at 25,000 different things. We considered art and real estate and commodities and every equity in the world and 15,000 other cryptos and every precious metal and every other strategy and all the derivative strategy. And I have experience with them all. And we picked the one that we thought was engineered to be the soundest treasury reserve asset. How do you know? Well, you spend 1,000 hours studying it and you wait a decade to see whether it will fail. And then you wait for it to be attacked 10,000 times. And if it's the winner, it's not 100% certain. But what I would say is it looked better than every other alternative. And at some point, if you're going to lose 99% of your wealth in the course of one lifetime if you take the conventional strategy. So when you know you're going to lose 99% of your wealth, at some point you got to take a risk, right? That drives the exodus, right? The ship behind me is people sailing across the ocean because they knew life was hopeless if they didn't leave land. And I think that you've got a perfect example. If you're sitting in any country with a weakening, collapsing currency, whether it's Turkey or Syria or Argentina or Venezuela or fill in the blank, it's hopeless unless you take a risk. And, Dan, my last point I make is there's a very conventional view, like equities are conventional stores of value. Well, equities aren't stores of value in Venezuela. Mm-hmm. Equities aren't stores of value right now in Russia. If the currency collapses or if the counterparty is not trustworthy, then the equity is not a store of value. And in this case, if you're going to hold an equity, I would say, like, I would rather in this environment own a stock like Disney that owned the intellectual property rights to every cultural icon in the Western world. Intellectual property, like, as opposed, or I'd rather own a company that owned 1,000 Picassos and Leonardo da Vinci paintings because they're property backed. Or I'd rather own a company that owned $1 billion of gold. I think there's a battle between East and West, and there's a battle between the fundamentalist and the traders, the hodlers and the traders. The hodlers have spent 100 hours studying this. They've concluded this is engineered perfect property or perfect money. They've got a 10-year to 100-year time horizon. They're going to hold it as generational wealth transfer. The traders think it's a risk-on asset, and they're thinking that I'm going to short it to hedge out my NASDAQ position. And they haven't spent 100 hours thinking about it or studying it. They're just fast money. So over the near term, the traders win, but over the long term, the hodlers win. And then in the East versus the West, like if you're, Manhattan Upper East Side and you've got a lot of money in the stock market, you feel very comfortable. You like your life and you like your models because they worked fine for you, But if you're living in Ukraine or Russia or South America or Kazakhstan or China or fill in the blank or Afghanistan or Syria or Lebanon or Turkey, the Upper East Side, stock portfolio isn't working for you. You don't have that option. Your option is you put it into Bitcoin or you lose it all. And so this means different things for different people, right? If you live outside the US, this is a lifeboat. It may save your life. It'll keep you from being impoverished or murdered or left destitute or starving, right? But if you're in the US, you're either an intellectual hodler and you get it, or you're a fast money trader. And every month that goes by, there are fewer and fewer traders, there are more and more hodlers. And the variable here is education. We are educating the masses on what this is. And if you think it's a speculative asset, when you use words like it's just a crypto thing, if you're using crypto, that means you really don't understand it, because nobody describes Bitcoin as crypto anything. When you say Bitcoin, it says, I might understand it. And I think this is really just a process of maturing of the asset class. And in the near term, I joke, it's kind of good to have the fast money traders, because I need someone to sell it to me, right? Otherwise, nobody would sell it to me. Once they're all educated, nobody's going to sell this stuff. They're going to hold it forever. And then you're going to have to pay 10x more money to buy it. So I almost don't want the world to get too educated too fast. Maybe I'm being tongue in cheek there. I'm doing my best to educate the world.